Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. So glad you guys could join us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and on X. We're glad to have you all with us. We're going to bring in our friends over on Instagram so they can be a part of our conversation as well. And then finally, we're going to bring in our friends over on Amazon Live, and I'll introduce you guys to our guest for today. Have a great one that's kicking off the week. I think you guys are going to really enjoy this book and the conversation around it. And we're now live on Amazon Live with Cyrus Webb Presents. If you guys are new to us on the Amazon platform, welcome. Make sure you guys do hit that follow button either here in this corner or down below. You also will see the book by our next guest. I'm so excited to welcome author Bialosky to our broadcast today. Jill has written this book, The End is the Beginning. It is a fascinating look not only at her mother's life, but also I think of the issue of life in itself. We're going to talk to Jill not only about the writing of the book, what it's been like for her to share that with all of us. If you guys are not staying connected with Jill, we'll let you know how to find her too. Jill, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Well, the pleasure's definitely all mine. Jill, I want to begin with where we are today, with the beginning.
Okay.
And that is the book is out. The reviews are already coming in. What has it been like for you, Jill, to see the way that people are responding, not only to this portrait of your mother, but also, as I mentioned, also of life itself?
Well, it's been really, really lovely for me, Cyrus. Of course, for a writer, when you finish a book and it's between two covers, there's this sigh of relief that that one feels about finally no longer having to tinker with the prose. And then there's this surreal reality of recognizing that other people are reading the book and they're finding their own stories that are somehow illuminated through my storytelling about my mother. So it's really been a surreal and beautiful. Many people have told me that my book is a tribute to my mother and also to women of her generation. And so that makes me feel very good.
Yeah. Hello to you, Alex, over there on IG. Glad you could be able to join us. And is there so many layers to this book deal? I think one of the big things for me is we're able to start to see your mother initially as she was, but then of course be able to see how she became. I think that's so fascinating because I think a lot of times we don't think about the events in our lives or the lives of others that kind of make us who we are. What was that like for you to kind of peel back the curtain and get to really be able to share the different layers of your mother?
Yes, well, that was it was a very interesting process for me, Cyrus, because what I wanted to do is exactly what you just said, that I wanted to peel back the layers of my mother's life. And I did that by starting at the end when she was, sadly, we lost her during COVID, the first month of COVID, and I was in New York and my mother was in Cleveland, and I was not able to attend her, to be with her when she passed, when she was in hospice. And then I was not able to be at the funeral, which because of COVID had to be gravesite outside with only 10 people. So I witnessed her funeral via FaceTime with my sister who was in Cleveland. And that experience really was it became difficult for me to process my mother's death. And I always wanted to write her story because she led such a remarkable life, and a full life, as you say, and I wanted to capture the full life. And so I decided to tell the story from the end of her life through the pivotal periods of her coming of age, all the way through to her coming of age, so that the reader could slowly see her coming alive throughout the book.
Yeah. One thing that struck me as I got into the book, Jill, was your mother lived not only, of course, a life that was in many ways complicated, but she lived in a complicated time too. I mean, she literally was alive, of course, at the end of World War II. You talked about what that was like for her, and I thought it was so fascinating. I mean, she was living during a literal war, but you also dealt with those internal struggles too. What was it like for you to kind of to think about that even for yourself about the how we can kind of be at war with ourselves inside from what is expected of us, not wanting to be someone who has to be taken care of, but also to be able to forge your own path. What was it like for you to think about when it comes to thinking about the way she grew up?
Mhm. One of my intentions of the book was for me to try and find the woman behind the mother, that we grow up with our parents and we know them just through the lens of being their son or their daughter.
Right.
And there's this whole other part of their lives that we're not fully attuned to. And so when I got toward the end of the book and was writing the chapter about my mother's childhood, as you say, during this period in history, she was born in 1933 in a very close-knit Jewish family. And yes, there was a lot going on in her internal life as a child. And while her parents were also much more astute to what was happening in the world outside home. And my mother was very close with her own mother. And when she was 8 years old, her mother got pregnant again. And she then was struck with scarlet fever, which went rampant in that era when there were no antibiotics. And my mother lost her mother during her mother's childbirth, giving life to her brother. So, in other words, my mother's mother died giving birth to my mother's brother. And that, writing about that and really taking in what that must have been like for my mother really made me so much more aware of how that early loss penetrated her entire life. And I think that one of my hopes in my book for the reader is that they will connect with that, how all of our experiences really make us who we are.
Yeah. That's such a great point, and I think it's such a great reminder for our audience. I want to say for those who are just tuning in, welcome. You all are watching Cyrus Webb Presents. We're excited about being able to have with us Jill Bialosky today. She's celebrating her newest book, The End is the Beginning. It's on sale right now here on Amazon. You guys can see it either the print edition or the Kindle edition are both on sale. For you guys joining us on the Amazon platform, you'll see it either here on the side or down below. We're also going to remind you guys how you can stay connected with Jill too. For those of you who are joining us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and on YouTube, you notice the link for Amazon is also with this broadcast as well. One of the connection pieces that you make in the book, Jill, and I made a note of this when I was reading it, was when you got your mom to talk about your father. Talk to us about that, what it was like for you, because we're able to see in the book that part when you have her talking about him, but also you're able to go back and kind of talk about they're actually being introduced to each other, their time together. What was it like for you though to see her being able to share reflections like that?
That was one of the most meaningful parts of writing the book, Cyrus, because throughout my life, well, let me just tell the audience that my mother, as I said, she grew up in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. And at that time, of course, women were expected to be wives and mothers. And that's where my mother saw her future. And she met my father when she was 19 or 20. They had a wonderful romance and were very much in love. My father was 5 years older. He was just starting his own real estate company, and they got married when my mother was 25, and they quickly gave birth to 3 daughters, all under the age of 3 years old. And they were very happy and felt very lucky to have this family together. And then sadly, when my mother was 25 and my father was 30, he died unexpectedly of a heart attack. And of course, that changed my mother's future in an instant. And so when I was writing the part of the book where they met and they got married and they had these children, it was almost as if I was recreating this really meaningful time in my mother's life. And even at the end of her life, she carried the memories of my father with her. And when she was in the care home suffering from Alzheimer's, she still wore the wedding ring that my father gave her, and she would twirl it around on her finger. And her cognitive abilities were limited, but we like to remember my father. And the one thing my mother used to say was that she couldn't believe that he chose her. That's how wonderful he was. And then I had to remind her that she chose him too.
Yeah, as you were saying that, Jill, I thought about something else you wrote in the book, and I'm going to step away from from what you share about your mother for just a moment, because one thing that because this is the first time we've had you as a guest on this platform, but of course you have written before. One thing that we're able to find out in the book, though, is the two of your shared love of books and words. What was it like for you to look back at that connection, and do you feel like, because of your mother and that was instilled in you, that it was inevitable that you were going to be a storyteller and also an author?
Oh, I love that you said that, Cyrus. Thank you. Yes, I do think that that my childhood and I was a very observant child growing up and a very intuitive child. And I think maybe that was also because I had this intuitive feeling that me and my sisters had to help take care of our mother as she was suffering from grief of losing her husband and struggling because she didn't have a livelihood. And as a young child, books really, I fell in love with books and with storytelling, and I spent a lot of time at the library when I was a young girl. And I found that books helped me to see that I was not alone, that, so many books when you're younger are about children maybe surviving with one parent. So I do feel strongly that my childhood informed my desire to want to become a writer. And I also felt sad that my mother didn't have the same education that I had, because she went to college just for one semester, and then she dropped out to marry my father, and she didn't have the skills to really have a livelihood other than she worked in retail. She also had her real estate license for a time. But I think because she was struggling, it made me feel more committed to wanting an education and to fulfill my own dreams of being a writer. So in a sense, because my mother wasn't able to fully experience her own dreams, she passed it on to me. And so much of my writing has been influenced by the struggles and the joy and the need to put my own personal experience into my art.
There's one section, I can't remember what chapter it was, Jill, but as you were talking, I thought about, there's one chapter in talking about your mom and books. You talked about you wish that I think the way you said it was that she could see herself as some of the women in the books you read. And I think that's the interesting thing about words that I've always loved is that, you're able to put yourself in other people's shoes, or sometimes it's aspirational. I wish I had the courage and fortitude of this person, or the independence of this person. And that's part of what I think you've done with The End is the Beginning, Jill, is show us not only, of course, a lot of times how I remember interviewing my grandmother before she died at 91, and her not thinking her life had been that eventful, and yet all the things she'd lived through and seen. Is that one of the things you hope the reader does, is as we learn about your mother, Iris, that we also are able to learn about ourselves and the importance of the events that make us who we are?
Yes, I thank you again for saying that. That's exactly what I hope for. There's a wonderful writer, Vivian Gornick, who wrote a book called Fierce Attachments, and about her own relationship with her mother. And I read an article where she said that the job of the memoirist is that, first of all, that you must tell the truth, but secondly, that you must be able to write your story in a way that a disinterested reader will want to read your book. And that, for me, is exactly what I hope for in telling my mother's story, that readers can see, as you say, many of our lives we feel that they're quite ordinary. We're going about our lives. We maybe are lucky to find a work that we love. Maybe we're lucky enough to raise children if that's what we want. Tragedy strikes, we don't know it's coming. And the fullness of a life is really something that we all share, right? And I do hope that my book allows the reader to experience that.
Yeah.
I know that even writing it filled me with more compassion for what we experience as human beings.
As you were talking about that, and again, I mentioned your own success before with this book, Jill, I want to ask you this question on a personal note. Did this book help you to better appreciate yourself and who you are, what has made you who you are today?
I think so. I think that writing this book was a very freeing experience for me, because I recognized how much I worried about my mother from a very young age, and I continued throughout my life, through the different periods that we shared. I was always worried about her, or felt guilty that maybe I wasn't there enough. And writing the book made me feel that actually I was there in the best way that I could be for my mother, and that we shared such a deep connection, such a deep bond that has stayed with me. And so writing the book, and I write about this at the end, there was something very freeing about finally coming to terms with her death, and with my recording her life as a subjective daughter, because of course I can't know everything about my mother, or would I even want to. But yes, it was very freeing, and it did allow me to sort of re-experience my own coming of age through a different lens, through that lens of looking back rather than living through.
It's a powerful thing, Jill. I'm so glad we got a chance to discuss it. Again, everyone, Jill Bialosky has been our guest. The new book is The End is the Beginning, a personal history of my mother. And I think what is also so fascinating is a personal history, I think, of what makes us who we are. So I think the audience will really appreciate this book. Again, it's available in print, guys, over here on Amazon. You guys can get it in print as well as a Kindle. And I should mention, Jill also narrated the audiobook. Jill, what was that like for you? To actually be able to, I could hear the emotion, especially in the beginning. I got a chance to hear bits of it. What was it like for you to be able to put it in words, and for people to be able to experience that with you?
Well, first of all, it takes a lot of physical it takes a lot of physical energy to I think we had 5 sessions of like 4 or 5 hours each session.
Oh, wow.
And yes, and I realized that yes, to talk that long takes your breath away. But I really enjoyed recording the book and being able to actually hear it, because what happens is the producer is allowing you to hear yourself speak and as you're recording. And I do have to say, I'm such a I'm a kind of a type personality where I'm always I can be self-critical because I want the book to be everything it can be. And by listening to it, I really did appreciate what I had accomplished in writing this book, because it wasn't an easy book to write emotionally.
Right.
There were parts where I write about very difficult situations of loss that my mother endured and that I endured. And yet there was something also exhilarating about being able to read it out loud for a potential audience.
Yeah. Thank you, Coach, to Kenya. She says, I really enjoyed this segment. Thank you so much for watching. And I want to say hello to you guys over on Instagram, too. Deja, hello to you. I think it's pronounced Cecile. Hello to you. Glad you guys could be able to join us. Jill, this has been a great conversation. I can't wait for people to be able to get the book, to be able to read it or listen to it and really take in the story, because I think not only is it personal for you, I think it's universal for all of us in many ways. And I think people will find something in it they can relate to themselves or someone that they know. So I'm excited about this. How can our audience stay connected with you?
Oh, thank you, Cyrus. Yes, I have a website, JillBialosky.com, and you can visit me on my website and find out about this book and other books that I've written. And then there is an email address to contact me. I'd love to hear from readers. It's Jill Bialosky, BIALOSKY.com.
Well, Jill, congratulations to you again. So glad that Leslie connected the two of us. Looking forward to our next chat together.
Thank you, Cyrus. I'm so happy to have been in conversation with you.
I appreciate that. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents. Until next time, you all make it a great one. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.